Felt good.
Hey, we're live.
Do you start horses? No. I know.
How's it come along on your questionnaire?
Well, I sent it out. Did you get it? It was in the packet. So, yeah, I managed to reduce the questions down about 40%.
Is your agent president?
A real good friend who just came from
So you can still play with the horses, but you don't have to take care of
I
them.
think he sent it out separately. He
My
sent it out
kids
earlier.
are
Well,
great.
no, it was included in the
Okay,
packet.
yeah, good. We're gonna go ahead and get started now.
Yeah.
Give Mission Control a chance to get seated and she can do roll call, please.
Yeah, that's all right there. It's quite a bit.
I guess I don't need a mic. We're pretty hot mics right here.
Yes.
We're set up.
It's here. I
District
guess
1
it's-
Supervisor Oberg.
Here?
District 3 Supervisor Michaels. I believe she's an excused absence. Member Jim Peterson.
Present.
Member Kevin Osterman.
Present.
Member Connie Kentelme.
Present?
Member Mary Shaquin.
Present?
Member John Black.
Present.
Member Joseph Chirolati, and he is an excused absence. Member Sandra Laney.
Here.
Member Vincent Gallegos, and he will be arriving late.
Well, a quorum being present, this meeting will come to order. Please, everybody, refer to today's agenda, the following items, all the way through item, well, let's see, 10 and then 3 in the other business. My name is Kevin Osterman. I'm the current chairperson for the Yavapai County Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee, CPAC. The committee is acting as an advisory body to the Board of Supervisors as per ARS 11-804 and 11-805, and is charged with the review and update of the Comprehensive Plan Update 2032, and time to time forward the recommendations regarding the plan updates to the Board of Supervisors. The committee members are appointed by the Board of Supervisors and volunteer their time. Today's meeting procedures will be as follows. First, I will read the agenda items into the meeting record. Staff will then present the items for discussion to the committee. The committee will ask questions of the staff. The committee will then discuss the topic at hand, consult with the comprehensive plan consultant, staff, and other speakers, as may be with questions and or concerns. The floor will then be open to public input, participation, online or in person. And please, everybody, take. I'll read the public participation guidelines for you in a moment. The committee will then act and vote, if necessary, to move the agenda item forward. As far as public participation goes, if anyone in the public wish to speak on any item in the agenda, please add your name to the sign-in sheet and let the administrative assistant know. When the meeting is opened to public comment, I, the chairman, will call your name, and you may come up to the microphone at that time, or if you're online, we'll just ask you to begin speaking. Please direct your comments and or questions to the committee and keep them brief and to the point. I have a 3-minute rule, and I actually have a stopwatch with me today, so we'll observe that rule as closely as we can to keep the meeting moving along. Please direct your comment once again to the committee and keep them brief and to the point. Any comments or documents submitted to the committee will be made public record, and once again, a 3-minute time limit will be imposed. Please silence your cell phones if you haven't already, and we shall get going on the meeting. First thing, please, if everyone will join me for a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. I guess. Okay, let's see. First thing we're going to do, once again, is disclosure of any ex parte contacts. Do I have any? Seeing none, approval of the minutes for the April 14th, 2022 CPAC meeting. Hopefully everybody's had an opportunity to review those minutes.
Comment?
Yes, John, comment. please.
I went through it and they're basically spelling and grammar kind of issues.
Okay,
I
did
marked
you
up
submit
the
these
copy
already?
and I'll just submit that to
Okay, good.
staff, yeah.
Anything of any great import, or?
Not really, it's just a clarification. Some of the sentences are a little
Okay, very
garbled.
good. Any other corrections? Okay, then I could use a motion.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Thank you,
with
Mary.
The corrections that Mr. Black has recommended.
I'll second that.
And John seconds it. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by raising your hand. Wonderful, unanimous, wonderful, thank you. Okay, I've already provided the explanation of meeting procedures. CPAC bylaw amendment, committee vote on approval. Everyone had an opportunity, we discussed the bylaws at the last meeting, some corrections were made. Is there anything else that needs to be corrected on the bylaws?
One thing.
Okay, good. Okay,
When they talk about a quorum, the quorum should be moved over to. It shouldn't be under amendments, it should be over here with meeting. I put it out here, I don't see it now.
okay, well, we'll just request the staff move
Okay,
the
yeah.
forum.
It should be over where the meetings are.
Okay.
Because that's the first thing you do is
Right,
establish a quorum, so it should be
Understood.
way in the front.
right, okay, so, I don't know if staff caught that, but
No, what are we
there's a
doing?
recommendation to move the quorum requirement under meetings as opposed to amendments.
What are we looking at? It would be under.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
it is, it's, right now, it's under miscellaneous procedures under
Right.
Article 5.
Yes.
And Committee Member Laney is asking to have that moved to Article 4 under meetings.
very good, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you for capturing that properly. Okay, next up, then, let's see, I think we need to have a vote, if I'm not mistaken, to approve the bylaws, which will require a motion.
I move we approve the bylaws
Okay, Ms. Laney
Yes.
moves
with the correction.
with the corrections to approve the bylaws,
And I'll second.
and Connie seconds that. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by raising your hand, please. And it appears to be unanimous. Thank you. Okay, moving right along. Growth area elements. A review of draft 3.0, the maps and text have been provided. This is slightly different than what you reviewed before because this has all the corrections and the tweaks that were put in it as a result of our past discussion. So does anyone have any comments or corrections on the growth area element as presented?
I have a question.
Yes, John.
I'm seeing this for the first time. I understand from Kazi's email that this is a second draft.
Right, correct.
I don't recall getting the first draft. Did I miss that
Was
somehow?
it the last meeting?
Yes, it was at our last meeting, John.
It was in the
Oh,
last.
I thought you, okay. I thought you said you had
So-
emailed this, okay. And does that apply to these drafts here? I mean, the water and,
No,
Okay.
see, what happened, it's a work in progress, so when we gave you something, Mr. Chairman, what we gave the CPAC committee is a continuous
Right.
upgrade of the thing. So right now, what you have is the final draft for water and transportation and the growth. But see, it's still gonna be working on based on your comments and other public comments.
Yeah.
okay, well, I guess I'm getting a little ahead of things here because I meant to be talking about the transportation and water,
Okay,
so.
real quick comment, and then Mary has something she'd like to say.
Go ahead.
I'd like to remind everybody that all of these are a work in progress right up until December.
Right.
So if we see anything that needs to be corrected, please point it out. But, so what we're approving now is what we have in front of us at this
Understood.
point in time.
Okay.
And then we're, once again, work in progress. Mary, you had something you wanted?
I do, because I searched through everything to find a draft of the growth area and saw Kazi's email. We did not receive this ahead of time, so I have had no chance to review it. I don't know if anyone else in the committee has had a chance to review the most updated one based on our comments of last meeting. So I'm uncomfortable, I mean, I would be unwilling to approve this today as a final draft from us, since I haven't had a chance to review it.
Can we, if it's okay, Chair, I would like to
Yes.
just go through some of the changes so that we
Please.
can discuss what the change, so you can highlight them and then you guys can go through again.
Okay, and then,
Thank you.
if you're still uncomfortable at that point, then we'll address that and we'll
Right. And you'll see in here, there are some areas like, Kazi and I discussed that we did go to like the character area plans, but not every area had a character area plan. So when we go out further to meet individually with the communities, then those, like some of these sections in yellow, those will be further revised.
Okay.
For those in-person meetings.
Okay, Jessica, please proceed.
Okay.
Thank you.
So in the introduction, everything kind of stays the same. One of the concerns was areas not in the growth area. So there was a couple chunks, paragraphs in here describing, while the growth area element defines specific targeted planning areas for growth and redevelopment, the land use element provides a specific policy direction for land use development within those defined growth areas. The growth area element should be used in tandem with the transportation and land use elements to guide sound planning and growth efforts. The growth areas are not intended to be restricted, and development may be proposed and approved regardless of being within or not within the growth area designation, because I know that was a concern that was brought up at the last meeting. And then also additionally, a growth area designation should not be the sole determination in land use decision making, but rather intended to inform and balance the comprehensive plan elements against economic infrastructure. So it's just to further define what that, because you guys were wondering, like, what does this impact, or the growth areas, what does it actually mean when used in other contexts? And so that was added in there. And about pinpointing appropriate areas for infrastructure expansion and improvements, as well as high-intensity land uses for growth possibilities. So it's just, that area was expanded to just further define. If there's any, if you have any wordsmithing, obviously you can, anything else you feel like is missing in that, but we're trying not to get too in-depth, because the growth areas is like the higher level, and then the land use will get more defined in terms of specific uses. It's more of just saying, and then the areas inside it, the growth area maps that you guys have probably seen and looked at, it kind of just defines in here. Like for instance, we did go through, like the Beaver Creek and Forest Junction and some of these, and added a lot of their specific sentences from those character area plans and put them in that, and maybe worded them around a little bit just so they would fit with the context. But those were specifically put in there as much as we could.
Thank you.
So, I think that was the main thing, was that question, and then going through the character areas. The ones we are missing, if anybody, when they're going out or if they're in their communities that we could not find further distinction on, were Thane, Halden, Spring Valley, Mayor, the ones in yellow, and Burnell. So we can, if you guys have suggestions as well for those areas, but we're gonna specifically target a meeting with them in person. But if there's anything before we go out to see them, that you guys, yes.
There's one issue that both Mary and I have brought up in the past, and that is that if we're being asked to review these maps, to say, the various, where we define the boundaries, the growth areas and so forth, we need to be able to see some kind of overlay of the permits that have been issued for the last 3 years, and apparently that's available. But I'm just saying, if you want me to review it and give my comments, I need to have that information. Just looking at a map, I'm not familiar enough to be able to.
I thought the maps had already, from GIS, they already were able to.
The maps that we have available are based on that permitting history, but I can certainly provide something more specific to you, yeah.
I mean, I'm just concerned that we did take that into account. I don't necessarily have to be the one that defines that. If you want me to review it, then I need to see the map overlaid. But if you're saying that the growth areas have been defined, or at least if that's one of the factors, then I'm fine with that.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And they were.
Okay.
And if I may, I'd like to point out, once again, we're referring to this as a final draft. So it's not a finished product.
Right.
If this is the best we have at this point in time. You'll see that there's a couple areas in here where it says insert map, insert charts. There's some blanks as far as actual acreages or square miles, so forth and so on. So there are things that are going to continue to be, there are improvements that are going to be continued to made to this. And as the committee members, all committee members, as you spot things that you feel need to be corrected, altered, whatever, you'll be free to, because once again, this is still a draft, even though it's our final draft. So that's all we're looking at approving for today.
I'm confused when you say it's a draft.
I know.
Just a draft, but it's the final draft.
It's a final draft. This is the final
I
work.
know. I know what you mean.
Yeah, I prefer to just say it's revision
I think
two,
so, but
or
Okay,
version
well,
two,
You
so that
can
we
call it
know.
anything you want.
Okay.
I'm just referring to it as
I
final
read the same
draft.
thing, I'm like, that's like an oxymoron, like.
We're done drafting. We're ready for the finished product which we'll have. by-
Usually final draft means you're done with the work.
Yeah.
It's finished, and
I
I'd
know.
rather not say that.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
Draft 2.
Draft two,
So
draft.
I'm going to ask for some clarification
Yeah,
because
please.
I'm not following
Sure.
the draft and the final draft.
Okay,
We are going to be provided an opportunity to take this away and bring back any comments at our next meeting, that this will not be published
correct.
as a final on the website until we have one more chance to make edits to it,
And then it
right?
won't, then it will no longer be a draft.
It'll be a final.
Does that help?
That doesn't help.
We will, at that
As
point,
long
we
as I
will
know the
seal
process, I don't care what you call it.
This is, in other words, I refer to this as final draft because it's not ready to be published yet.
Okay, you need to give us a sheet with your vocabulary.
Perhaps I will. It's not a bad idea, maybe. Okay, thank
So
you.
Kazi, you're bringing out the growth there, are these?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is the overview of the growth area, and I think Andre also has that there. So just to kind of give you a visual thing. So we have picked up each area based on the permit. We have both commercial and residential. So we try to box it rather than, go by street or parcel. So this is kind of generalization. That's how it will end up. We're not going to go in the weeds and figure out parcel by parcel or street by street. It's kind of general idea where these growth areas are targeted, if you will. And then we'll take it from there. And then, of course, it's open for you all to give us some more advice. and
Question.
Great, thanks.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay,
Real quick, Jeremy, you have something?
Yeah, just to clarify, that, to Dr. Black's point earlier, that is based on permitting history for the last 3 years.
Yeah, understood.
That is a factor.
John?
and looking at this map, I have difficulty seeing growth areas. I see a few dots, but are there regions on that I'm not seeing?
That's just permitting history.
The
right?
green.
They're, yeah, kind of
Okay.
outlined in green here. You can get up, take a closer look at it.
All
but
right, I
it's-
understand.
It doesn't really pop out like that, but.
Understood.
Still being worked on. Like, I would suggest if we can, a lot of, like, when the final draft, the final map
Okay, we'll come
comes
up
out,
with it.
usually, what you'll see is they'll be colored in.
Understood.
So that way on the key, it's a lot easier to manage, okay, this is Big Chino, this is Beaver, this is, all this other stuff. But,
Great.
yeah.
Great.
Okay, yeah, anyways, actually, it's referred to in new business as draft 3.0. So, does someone else have a comment?
Yeah. It talks here about, you're identifying areas that are not covered as a part of a, what does it say here? Incorporated area. So I'll admit, a lot of these are not incorporated. Chino Valley is incorporated. Prescott and Prescott Valley is incorporated. Clarksdale is incorporated. Don't have Camp Verde on here, which is incorporated, so obviously, I'm a little confused on why we have some of the incorporated areas in here and others that are not, and we say that we're basically trying to identify those areas that are not incorporated.
So being in the county is one of the difficult things when you do the growth area maps, but, because you're gonna have infill sites, you're gonna have pieces next to, otherwise you're gonna get very parcelized. So you do these maps and you show it and but it has no jurisdictional authority if it's already in a jurisdiction. So like we're encouraging growth next to these jurisdictions and they'll most likely annex in the future or take over, and we're incorporating the growth area suggestions based upon what those jurisdictions have on their general plan maps as well. But if we didn't have anything on here and we did not show this area next to the jurisdictions, then it would just be, free for all, they can do kind of stuff. But we're trying to gear them towards what that jurisdiction is and looking for, and also what we're seeing as potential for like good corridor or gear stuff away from that, what it's not, if it's, we want more residential versus commercial. But obviously, anything that comes in, we would only have authority over those unincorporated parcels. Anything incorporated, and even, and the thing is, even with those unincorporated parcels, if they're near a jurisdiction, the county does have to send out notices to those jurisdictions, so they'll also get a say. So it's a combined effort. But as
Well,
far as the growth, it's a block, since we don't parcelize it, like he was mentioning. It's just big blocks because it is a county level versus a jurisdictional town level.
Well, the other thing is Congress is not on here. And I would think, since they're not incorporated, you would be definitely indicating them. That would probably include, North Ranch area and also North Wickenburg area. There's a tremendous amount of growth in that area going on right now. So I think those are some that are missing from here, definitely. The other thing is, I will say that that large green block up there in the northwest corner, that's mostly forest and state trust lands. So I'm not sure, just because we had a PAD up there of 50,000 acres that got turned down, I hope that wasn't the genesis of saying that that was a growth area, because it got turned down, and I don't think there's any intent by many right now to go into that area, because how much area up there is forest? Right now, the rancher is trying to even agree with the forest to take over more of his land. So I'm not sure that I would show that as a growth area.
Well, sure, the point behind that one was like you mentioned, because of that PAD. Because by putting it as a growth area, you have more jurisdictional leeway to require them to do things. So when PADs, like for instance, that one that came through, you can then say, this does not meet what we're looking for, this does not meet our comprehensive plan, therefore we will not approve it. So it gives you further backing and leverage to deny something or gear it towards a certain level of density, 1 unit per acre or things like that. So that was more the intent on that one, was because you had seen somebody come in with that, and it was kind of difficult. I know staff was having some issues, and I know the supervisors were having issues in terms of like, how do we prevent this kind of thing, or without having infrastructure in place, without having roadways in place, like how can we gear what we need first? And so that was the intent on that one, is just because it gives you more background to do that, versus saying we want it as a growth area. It just lets you say, this is what we want infrastructure first, we want roadways first, you're gonna have to follow this, versus it just being on the general plan as rural, which doesn't tell you really anything other than rural.
Okay.
Okay. John, you have a comment?
I think maybe what we need to do here is look at defining what we mean by a growth area. If we show a map and say these are the growth areas, I'm hearing kind of a mixed message here. Originally, I thought I understood these are the areas the county is going to encourage growth to go into. Now I'm hearing that, well, we're marking this as a growth area because we want more control over it. So you've got a mixed message here as far as what that map means.
So growth can mean like several things. And it is mostly intended, like you say, for encouraging growth in certain areas, but that's when we go in through these areas, and that's why we further define them. I know some of the, and why we have the definitions in here, what type of growth we're looking for. So, like in some of them, they said they don't want higher density, they want to encourage more residential, or encourage like the lower density growth of single-family detached versus multifamily. And so that's where you further define it. So it's a growth area, but you can also, but you're determining, it's like without doing a specific area plan. Okay?
So does that say that in here? I haven't read this draft, obviously, but
I'm trying to think what I put in the beginning.
I'm just suggesting that maybe we need to put your words in here.
Further define it. Because it's just another way. I've seen other jurisdictions do it. I don't know, John, if you've done it in your jurisdictions as well, but it's just a further way of, without having to do a specific area plan, without doing a PAD, without providing without saying, because otherwise you get into the specific, I know jurisdictions will do a specific area plan for something like that, but then that gets into, now you need to do technical documents of what cross sections of streets look like, trails look like, all kinds of landscaping. I mean, it becomes a themed thing. And that's not what you're looking for. State land usually does stuff like that too. And you just want to have more control over it, because there was that past history of just a submittal.
Okay. Mary, you had a comment that you wanted to...
I do. I think if we're going to put incorporated areas into this, we need to put them all, because I can see everybody putting up questions. I mean, Camp Verde is a huge growth area, right? And they are annexing county, so is Cottonwood. So if we're going to address in whatever level, I think they all either need to be in here or none, because we don't want the dialogue and discussion or controversy on this element to be about what's included or what isn't. So I think we need to have consistency on what's in here.
You know, real quick, I would prefer to have these identified as potential growth areas, not encouraged growth areas or just potential, but.
But there are some that are missing then, I guess is
No,
what
I
I'm saying.
understand, I
Yeah.
understand
Okay.
exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
And actually, I find myself in agreement with you. It's not unusual, Eric, but I do find myself in agreement with that comment. It should be either all or none.
Thank you.
For a variety of reasons, a list of reasons. Connie, you had something.
I did. Getting back to Supervisor Oberg's comment on that area up there. So other than the planned area development that is no longer going, there has been no other permit pulling for pads in that area. So I asked this in the beginning of our sessions. Are we encouraging it by including that? And what would be the problem of not including that in the growth area, since there's nothing to substantiate growth in that area? So it's like the chicken and the egg. Do we go ahead and designate that as a growth area and hope that a big builder doesn't come in? Or do we take that out of the growth area? Because remember, not all these people that are looking to develop are from these areas, so they're going to be relying heavily on those maps.
That's a good point.
I mean, we can put into that section, when we define it, it says largest growth area, large farms, large lots, area for prime for conservation areas. Development shall require full infrastructure studies, environmental, biological, to determine best development plans in the area. I'm not sure what land use we have potentially going over there. We were looking at, but I mean, if you don't put it in there, okay, so this here is saying it's going to need all this stuff right now in the growth area. If you don't have it in there and you just have the land use underneath it, then it's just going to be like what happened last time when it came through. It's just going to say rural. And it won't have any other kind of teeth to it, saying that it's going to require small lots, large farms.
But based on.
But then it's just, then at that point, then it's just up to the commission and the supervisors at that time to interpret how they feel the area should grow versus if you want to put it in writing, I guess is what it would be.
But based on that theory, that comment, that could be applied to any area. We could grab any area in the attempt to try to control it and just include it in the growth area, even though there's no facts to substantiate that it's actually growing in that direction.
Yes,
I mean,
there was some, but we did tie it in with, I mean, I know there's the other piece, but I know we tied it in on the highway as well. There was some stuff up there, but not much.
I mean,
but yeah, there's nothing.
The permitting process with the overlay is 100% accurate. Those are facts. We already know that those permits have been pulled, whether they've been executed or not. That's an indication of the growth area in my mind because it's more literal. We have the facts. If we grab that, that's a large area there. I think, again, because I know how the development world works, if somebody from California comes over here, they grab that map, they're going to go, oh, I guess I can develop all the way up in there. So are we encouraging growth in an area that we really don't probably, not that they can't do it because of private property rights, but.
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly shrink it and cut it just to piece along the highway. It's really up to
Supervisor
your
Ober,
guys'
should we
thought.
include that or not?
I think since there's so much Forest Service land up there and Arizona State Trust land, I don't see any of that being developed. I mean, Forest Service is not going to sell their land. I know Arizona State Trust land, you know, they have grazing allotments up there. That's where they get their funding off of the use of that land. So I will tell you also that there's no water up there. Once you get beyond the Big Chino Ranch, there's no water. Everything that was going to be developed up there was going to have to haul water. And I think that would be a great disincentive to anybody wanting to go in there and build anything large. It's probably most suitable for rangeland and for cattle raising and that nature. So I think it should be pulled out of there as a potential growth area. Now, if you want to do something right up along I-40, you know, I think that makes sense around, you know, Seligman and places like that. But the large area that, if you look at the map, and I wish I had one here, you could see that It's all green and yellow.
Yeah.
Sandra, you have a comment?
Instead of calling it future growth area, why don't we call it existing growth area? And
Or
that way you can
potential.
leave it in there. And existing means you can grow or you don't have to grow.
True.
But you're not saying this is going to happen in the future.
But it's a comprehensive plan for the next 10 to 20 years, so it's supposed to be for the future. So it's not like it's not a current, like a zoning map, it's not a current plan. This is geared for the next 10 to 20 years.
It's a projection.
Projection.
Right.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Jerry.
As I'm listening to the conversation, I missed part of the conversation, I apologize for that, I had to step out, but as I heard a couple of things that maybe we could incorporate. We could potentially call that a potential growth area, or we could shrink that area just to the highway and call that the potential growth area, something like
I
that.
like the word potential though, personally.
Future,
Yeah.
yeah.
I heard, I think Supervisor Oberg had made that statement, but, we could kind of make that compromise to shrink that down closer to the highway area there.
I would be in favor of that.
I see a lot of nodding heads.
Yeah, try to
Do we
protect
need
it.
to have a show of hands or anything, or? Everybody likes to, yes.
One other thing that we could consider, as Supervisor Oberg pointed out, the forest land out there, we could potentially also, point out in that growth area as a conservation area, if you like. So, then that way the big developer from California or other places don't come and grab those land.
Yes.
So we can preserve those areas because they have no water out there, they have nothing except for whatever state land and forest land wants to do.
That's a better choice.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I like it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I agree, and I think all of our maps should show areas you can't build on, right?
Right.
So it's clear for anyone when they see the growth areas, and then they see 75% of the area surrounding it is, state trust land, or, forest land, or whatever, and that also sends a strong message. It's not like you can easily go and build or do anything in those areas, and I think we should include that designation or marking or whatever in every map we have.
So
As we're looking at growth
you
areas.
can't tell people they can't build on their property, you'll get a lawsuit.
Yeah.
But we can identify what are state lands and what are,
Yeah. And
forest
state-
lands
and-
on the
And
maps.
state land has a law, they need at least 1 unit per acre. State
But-
trust land.
And people could purchase it in the long run.
But like forest lands or whatever, but, we can put some wording in there, like these areas are geared towards this. We could never have, and we cannot have a zoning or the designation on our comp plan that does not allow, that it says like open space. If you put that on there over state trust lands or anything like that, they will be here in 5
Well,
minutes.
but that's what I guess maybe I'm not communicating. If it is state land, we can put a mark around it and say it is
Yeah.
state trust land.
Yeah.
Not make a comment about what could be done on it or anything else. But people know, I would think, what that means. Or if it's forest land, so,
Yeah.
without putting a definition or whatever, but it's not open space that is easily buildable, that's easily accessible. It clearly makes a statement just by putting those words
Well,
on
Jessica,
it.
I have a question. Is there any reason why we don't want to designate it as state trust land?
Yes? Are you
Okay,
gonna
what-
say this, John, or should I?
I
Please.
could just add on, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
so and it kind of speaks, well, it does speak to the conversation right now, especially with Supervisor Oberg. I did some work for the State Land Department a couple years ago, and the nature of the checkerboard layout of state trust land, it's every other section. So when you look at, you can't see it from here, but if you look at detailed mapping of all of Arizona, whether it's Yavapai County or Coconino or whatever county we're looking at, there's a lot of checkerboard, and that really lends itself to not really being developer friendly.
Right.
And so, as the supervisor indicated, a lot of the state trust land in areas that have limited water are under grazing leases. Up in Coconino County, a couple years ago, worked on some alternative energy, higher wind characterization up in the I-40 corridor. And so I think we're on the right path with how we're approaching state trust lands.
So the comment of why should we not, the reason I would say, you should definitely have, and we do have the map where it designates straight trust land, BLM land, and that is a separate as opposed to a growth area map and the land use map, you want to make sure you have a designation of a land use over all state trust land because it is sellable and they can sell it at any time. And despite grazing leases, I've done several of these rezonings in other counties. Although it is grazing, I've done ones that changed them to industrial. So regardless, you just want to have a designation on there. If you just leave it as blank, there is no general plan to tell the supervisors or commissioners that it should not be what they're attempting to rezone it to. You need that. That's one of the requirements of rezone. Does it match your general plan? And if you do not have a designation on it other than state land, you cannot say
It can't be
it
done.
does, right.
So without skating on thin ice, can we reach a consensus on how we should identify these areas? Yes.
Mr. Chairman, member of committee, I also wanted to point out by default, Ms. Chacon mentioned about the other cities and towns. Those maps, their area will be integrated in our comprehensive plan, because when you send out the 60-day notice to all the cities and towns around here, they'll say you have to, integrate our plan, so we are not in conflict. So by default, a lot of the plans that they already have existing will be included in this area. So say, for example, Camp Verde identifies the area of growth. We'll have to show it here if we have room to show it. That's what will be mentioned for all unincorporated area. That's the only place we have our jurisdiction. Rest of them, we'll have to abide by the existing county and cities.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Thank you. I tend to like to be proactive. And if that's the case, let's send this to Camp Verde and say, we're in the process of doing this. Would you please provide us the paragraph or whatever, and to all the communities that we have not yet identified in here, instead of waiting until we have the final draft out there for comment.
I already have a letter ready to go.
Beautiful, thank you.
I'm waiting for the third Indian tribe to get their address. I cannot find any contact information, so I have 2 of them. So I want to send it to, everybody, state land, BLM, National Forest, all the cities and towns in advance. So you have a more comprehensive idea what their thought process are. So
Thank you.
it should probably, if I don't find the last address, I'll go ahead and send it anyway next week.
I think we got that address too. I think we finally received that.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah, we'll get together after.
Okay.
And if we
good.
could, as a committee, if we could circle back to the question of incorporated areas that have been identified here, as Mary mentioned, and as I actually agree with, I don't know if it's all or nothing, but as far as incorporated areas go, at the very least, we shouldn't identify the incorporated area as an area of potential growth. Maybe the area surrounding an incorporated area, possibly, if we wanted to go there. Obviously, there's going to be more potential growth surrounding, we'll say, Chino Valley than probably a number of other places in the county. But I don't think we should identify an incorporated area as a potential growth area in a county plan, myself.
And these, I think what's misleading here is the titles. The titles are misleading just because that's what they were near.
Yeah.
Some places will just say growth area A, growth area B. They'll say, northeast side, southwest side. And so we can definitely change these titles or regroup them in any way, at this point as well. But I think we just went with what it was closest to, what people identify with as the title. But if we can always renumber them so it's not confusing for those incorporated areas versus like making sure everybody feels like they're included. That wasn't the intent. It was just what it was near.
Okay. Yes, John, one more.
I guess I'm kind of returning to my original point. The state mandates that we have a growth areas element in our comprehensive plan. Most of what I've read in the state mandates, they're not real specific about what has to be in each element, okay? And that leaves us open here. So what are we saying with our growth areas element? Are we saying these are the areas where we're promoting growth or not? And I think that ought to be very clear in the opening paragraphs to that element to say, here's the purpose of this.
And I think we should state them as, once again, as potential growth areas, not
Well, even
encouraged or
potential, I mean, as he's
projected.
talking about forest areas and up there, those aren't potential growth areas, but,
And for that reason, we probably shouldn't include them.
okay.
Yes, Connie, please.
Chairman, Mr. Black, under purpose, the third paragraph here states that. It says, "Growth areas are not intended to be restrictive, and development may be proposed and approved regardless of being within or not within a growth area designation. Additionally, a growth area designation should not be the sole determinant in land use decision-making." So I think basically everything we're talking about is great, but what this paragraph is intended to tell people, it's the message that goes out to the builders. Just because that green line is there doesn't mean you have to go there. You can, because of property rights, you can build wherever you decide to build. And there's some, like Del Webb Corporation, they purposely look for unincorporated area. I mean, there's big companies that actually want that. So we're not being restrictive. And that's the paragraph right there, I think, that basically sends that message.
I'm not talking about being restrictive, I'm talking about promoting.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about restricting growth, I'm saying, is the county saying this is an area that we would
That was
like to
our
see
point.
growth in?
Up in that forestry area, I
And-
think it.
And that's where I have difficulty. I think that ought to be clarified in some way.
How do we leave that?
I kind of heard to remove most of it unless it's along the road.
Along 40.
40.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Any other comments or corrections to be made for staff before we move to our next item? I'm assuming that we're going to receive then another draft, a 3.0 draft this time. Yes, Cos?
Mr. Chairman, and also, we might need some more help also. We are getting ready with the consultant with the busy time coming up ahead with other programs to go out, do an outreach. Like, for example, go to Congress, Yarnell, Chino, and get their input, show them the maps and stuff. And then we'd like to come back with you with an updated information we got from you today.
That's fine with me. How does everybody else feel about that, though? Do I see nodding heads?
I'm sure you'll get feedback if you say this is a growth area and they don't want growth there, you'll hear about it.
Okay. Anything else? Anything else on this topic? Going once, going twice? Okay, let's move on to, I think staff has their guidance now. So moving along, let's talk about water and transportation.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please.
It's a pleasure for me to introduce two major author. They're from our flood control district, Elizabeth and Tony, they're sitting behind. This is a document, you have always seen a little bit of here and there, but this water document that you have in front of you, I did not send it out on email because we received it just last week. I want to take time to read it myself, as well as give you opportunity to read what Mr. John Black sent you. That was a 36-page document. I thought you needed a lot of time to, concentrate on that because that's a major game changer for what we are doing right now. So I wanted to give you time and not overburden you with more reading documents. So this is your homework to take it. This is the most updated document that brings in the current status of the state of Arizona and water issue, the water quality and quantity.
Okay.
So it encompasses everything. It talks about adequate water, about adequate water facilities and stuff like that. It talks about clean water. So it's very comprehensive. Take a read, and then we will bring it back next month.
Okay, could we get a briefing on it, possibly
Yeah.
from Elizabeth? Tony?
Elizabeth and Tony, please.
The floor is yours. Great.
All right. So when we put this together, Elizabeth found most of the content, and I contributed as well, and then we edited together. We looked for the most current available data that we could find that was reliable. So a lot of the language in here came from the 5th management plan for the Prescott AMA. The last page shows our other references. So what we looked for were areas of redundancy as far as the language goes in there. And we just wanted to make sure that we covered all of the elements that we thought were important. So we left all of our goals and objectives in there. We wrote this with the intent that maps and other information could be added throughout as needed. And so what we think we've come up with here is a good working document that undoubtedly will go through several revisions and hopefully lead to a nice end product that's useful and that captures the real issues that the state of Arizona currently faces when it comes to adequate water supply.
Okay, good. So this is homework. We're not going to vote on this today. Yes, John?
I'd like to, once again,
Yes, please.
request that we put a version number on each draft that we distribute. This is version 1.
Okay,
Yeah, these will
Very
be
good.
reformatted to match the others.
Yeah.
version 1. Everybody please, if you would mark this on your, and once again, this is homework. We'll be discussing this at our next meeting next month. And hopefully we'll be able to approve it, or at least clean it up a little bit and hand it back to staff and let them work on it a little bit more, or whatever's gonna happen with it. Get this, this is a really important element, and one that we wanna absolutely make sure we get as right as possible. Yes, Jeremy?
Just a brief comment, Mr. Chairman, too. This is a development services, that is historically taken the lead, or I should say maybe facilitated the comprehensive plan updates, but this is actually a countywide document, and we get assistance and help from all different departments in the county, and I just wanted to extend our appreciation to Tony and Elizabeth and the Flood Control District for their help. They put all of this information together, and this is really a very comprehensive document. I think you're going to really appreciate the information that's inside of it. So Development Services is always generally at the forefront of the comprehensive plan update, but we appreciate all of the help. It's a countywide project, so.
I agree. Thank you, Tony and Elizabeth, very much for what you've done so far. We look forward to the product that you bring back to us next month. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I also want to point out that this document, as you read, is something that's not been done before in the county from a policy standpoint.
For
So
a
you're
variety of
going to be
reasons.
facing some tough questions,
Right.
tough decision, as far as what goes on. So yeah, if you read it, you'll make up your own decision, and you let us know which way you want to move forward.
I feel certain that we will. Yes, John?
I just want to point out that we have what we call a Growing Water Smart
Right.
committee that has been attending Sonoran Institute workshop, and we're approaching finality on that in terms of the output from that. That presumably would have an impact on what we put into this element.
Absolutely,
So
yes.
that's
And
coming
then
up.
there's another movement for the Clean Water Act on the, Plan 208 plan that addresses wastewater and stuff like that. So that's something also going to be incorporated here down the road.
And I believe that Tony and Elizabeth have been in connection with Growing Water
Yes.
Smart folks. And
They're on that committee, yes.
They're on the committee, and so it's just a matter of getting it all together, refinements, and
Yes, sir.
We're
hopefully
doing a
something-
final, I think it's this coming week on the 17th. I think we've got a meeting to finalize it, so.
Very good, wonderful, thank you.
The greatest challenges that we've got right now are limited availability of 2020 census data. I'm sure you've run into that already in building the comprehensive plan, but certain layers will not be released. Or I should say there are workarounds being developed still. So the urban areas criteria critically is one of those. And the Clean Water Act right now is undergoing revisions that are expected to be out and expected to be finalized in about a year or so.
National level?
Yes, sir.
Very good.
So on this, the most impactful from that Growing Water Smarter will be the goals and objectives in here.
Exactly.
That's,
Yes.
those are the ones that pull from that exhibit,
Yes.
Action plan.
Connie?
Just a question to those that are involved in the Growing Water Smarter. Are you in collaboration with SRP, CAP, you are? So are they giving you the information from their mapping?
Well,
Can't-
in collaboration, how do you mean?
Well, are you sharing data with the people in the know? For example, the CAP, SRP, the Colorado Water Association, I forget what they're.
So I know, I am in contact with people in those agencies. In developing the water elements section, I wouldn't say that we've collaborated. We have borrowed publicly available information that they have, but.
Because they've paid for, scientific studies.
Right.
Are they sharing that information with, because how do you craft a water act without the accurate information? And they have accurate information. from, I think it was 2018, when they completed their GIS mapping through the Army, was it the Army Corps of Engineers?
Yeah, and so we have that data. Like I said, whatever's publicly available, we do have.
Yeah.
And so. I
But
don't know
is
if
that
that's-
how you base it on that data? You're not going out and collecting your own data.
Correct.
You're basically compiling the data from all these different organizations to come up with the act, the verbiage for the act. Okay.
Well, the act, you mean the Clean Water Act? That's a federal document.
Right,
So
but aren't
that
you
will
working on that
eventually-
also?
No, we're
Okay.
waiting for it. We
Okay.
need it.
Okay.
And that'll eventually be published to the Federal Register, and, at that point, we'll have it. But
Yeah.
the important thing with that is that it's gonna redefine waters of the US
Right.
again.
Yeah.
So, it's critically important.
But isn't it, because it's only affecting mostly the southwest, other than the quality of the water in the east, we are affected by the quantity.
We are,
Yeah.
and we are particularly affected, I'm glad you mentioned that, actually. That's one of, that has been called out specifically by the EPA, that 93 to 96% of the streams in Arizona and New Mexico are ephemeral. So they don't normally flow, or they flow for parts of the year, whereas in other states like Minnesota and Wisconsin, for example, 96 or so % of their streams are perennial, so they're always flowing. And so the impact of that act is very different, in this part of the country than it is in wetter areas.
Yeah.
So
So they're crafting that specific to the southwest.
it'll be federal, it'll be a one-size-fits-all. Now,
Yeah,
I know that
that's-
doesn't sound good, but we
No.
have ADWR and ADEQ both adding additional rulemaking to tailor it to this area. So ADEQ in particular has come out with the surface water protection list, and so that adds protections to about 300 or so streams that are not protected under the federal program by itself. And that changes every month too, by the way.
Yeah.
So it's always up to date.
Any further comments, questions, concerns? Okay, once again, homework. Next thing moving along is the comprehensive plan update schedule.
Transportation, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah, there was one other element I want to introduce briefly. And as Jeremy mentioned, this is a countywide, cooperation between staff. So a shout out to the Transportation for Public Works. And simple, one of your colleagues in the committee, Mr. Vincent, guy that's sitting here, he was also, thank him for leadership, getting this transportation element. What you have in front of you is the most updated, the most reliable and correct, latest information on transportation. Includes transit and, other multimodal options. So
I
this
was
will
going to
be.
ask you about this. I didn't see it on the agenda, so I thought, well, perhaps.
Right, yeah, those are the two documents, like I said before, it was probably my error that I should have sent it to you online, but you already had too much to read. So I saved a little,
So since you have too much to read, we're going to provide you with some more to read.
Yeah. So this is your homework. I thought printing it out would help you so you could redline it. And, if you have any comments, you can write it in order. I have sent you also the electronic copy. When you get home, you'll find it today. But these are the two documents. And again, I want to thank Public Works, SIMPO, Flood Control District, and of course, GIS. They have been very, very helpful getting us to this point.
Great. Well, thank you for being proactive and beating me to the punch on that. That was going to be my next question. What are we going to do with this?
One comment.
Yes, please.
Once again, I would like to see a version 1
Version
on
one,
this,
okay.
okay?
Okay, everybody, please pen and ink version 1.0. Okay, very good. I think we're ready now to move on to the comprehensive plan update 2032 schedule. And it appears that we're still on schedule, yay. Our next meeting in June will cover the draft transportation and water element approvals. And cost of development introduction for I'm not even sure who all that's for. TW,
Public Works,
Public Works, okay, thank you.
the Yavapai County Sheriff's Office, Development Service Department, and Flood Control District. Those are the group of people that has some kind of a, capital improvement project or some, money allocated for doing things that we want to include in the cost of development. So what does it cost to build this road? What does it cost for the sheriff to go out and service this area? So all those things are taken in effect, and we'll give you some kind of a fiscal impact information.
Okay, and I would recommend that we also, for June, we're going to be discussing the updated growth elements, growth area element version, whatever it's gonna be this time, 3.0.
Okay, yes.
So that'll be also on our agenda for June.
Would that depend upon when we go out to the neighbors?
Right.
Though? I wouldn't,
It won't be
We
next
should-
month.
so yeah, we might need to push that then.
Yeah.
Okay, so
So
push
after-
that one to July, you think? Are you gonna need to say
then we
complete all
can-
your open houses? And
Right.
Yes, Mr.
How's
Chairman. July would be a better
That's where
month
it
for
is.
growth.
Would
Okay,
be more complete then.
I also, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I wanted to point out that we already have a draft open space, and we'll put that version 1.0 and send it out to you tonight. That was the first step we took, but as the open space goes, Yavapai County doesn't have a department like, Parks and Recs or anything like that. As opposed to, you have Prescott Valley, you have City of Prescott, they have trails and master plans. So a lot of those things are gonna be, reflected in this open space plan, what's going around us.
okay.
And then if you have any input, that'd be a good time to give us your input, and by now, so we'll send you a draft tonight, this evening to read, so you have 3 documents to read.
Appreciate it, thank you.
And that will be added in June also, because open space is gonna be a very light read, because there's not too much of, like heavy lifting as opposed to like water element or transportation element,
Right.
where the county has very heavy involvement. In open space, we'll just show what's around us.
Wonderful, good. So getting back to the comp plan schedule, does anyone have any questions or see any corrections that need to be made on that, at that schedule at this point, other than the ones we just made? Looking around, don't see anybody indicating anything, any interest in that, so let's move to the next item. John Black, Community Vision Survey, additional request. I believe it's pared down to 130 statements now, if I'm not mistaken.
105.
105, I'm sorry, I apologize. So now down to 105 statements, and we need to figure out what we're gonna do with that.
Okay, I wanted to go through the 3 documents that I sent out to everybody. First of all, when I did the original survey, I did it based on, partially on the results from our initial, I think it was called a vision statement survey, but it was the first survey we did. The one where we got 900 responses initially, very good responses. Turned out the 900 were not posted on the web, so I was not able to download those to make up the initial list of questions. Basically, there was one question at the end of that survey that said, what do you think should be covered in the comprehensive plan? So, but I was able to get, we took that survey down and then we put it back up, and we've now got 200 and some odd responses. I was able to get those results, and those are the results I used to build the initial list of questions, okay? Since that time, I've been able to get hold of the original 900, a lot more input. I think we all agree we don't need any more questions in the survey. So what I did in the first document that I sent to you, and I'll just read the intro, I titled it, "What Have Yavapai County Residents Said Is Most Important to Them?" This is an analysis of the 900 responses that we got initially. And what I've done is I've gone through and they were typed in. They weren't, I agree or disagree. They were an open-ended question. So people were very free about saying what they wanted to see on the plan. So I'll just read this. In early spring 2021, Yavapai County posted a community vision survey online. Over 900 Yavapai County residents took that survey. The last question on that survey was, quote, "What do you believe are the most important topics or issues that should be addressed in the 2022 comprehensive plan update?" End quote. To me, that's very important input. We need to see this input in order to know what to put into the plan. So what I did is I went through those 900 responses. I extracted from the Excel file all of the written responses they have, and I categorized them. based on, how many people wanted this topic covered, how many wanted this topic covered. So the first sheet you see in this first document is a summary. For example, 65 people are concerned about too much groundwater pumping, okay? 43 people are concerned about maintaining a rural small town feel, okay? 11 say they need local retail shopping, okay? So I'm just listing these as examples. I would encourage you to go through this first 2 pages. Now, I also added on to that all of the actual responses. So there's a lot of paper there, and you don't really need to read through that. That's the reason why I provided you with the summary at the beginning. But this will give you an idea of what is at the top of the list as far as people in the county with concerns that they have. And I think when we get done drafting each element, we should look at this and say, have we covered these things that people regard as the most important issues? Okay, so that's what the first document. That really wasn't related to the original survey that I wrote, but I felt like this is important information for us all to have. The second document that I did is, last time we had a rather extensive discussion of the ins and outs of the survey, and there were concerns expressed about it and what we needed to do. So I transcribed our entire discussion, and then I took each person's comments about what they thought should be done, how it should be handled, so forth, and I grouped them under topics. For example, how about splitting it into 2 surveys? Mary suggested that. That was probably the most valuable suggestion I got, because it really gave me a criteria for saying, okay, how do we reduce the number from 180? Everybody basically agreed 180 is too many questions, okay? There wasn't any real consensus about how many there should be, but we needed to reduce them. Supervisor Oberg basically said, maybe 100 or 120 questions. He was the only one that gave a number. So I have, using all of these suggestions, and I went through so that each of you knows, I took into account your suggestion and what I did about it. That's what the second document is, how I got to where I got to. And then in the end result of all of that is I've now reduced the questionnaire down to 105 questions.
And as I understand, you're going to divide those 105 questions into 2 instruments, is that correct?
No. I took out, there was 180 originally.
Yeah, right.
It's down to 105 now. All the questions that I took out would go into the second survey. I didn't bring that up now. I said that's for a later discussion. Okay, so I just took them out of the discussion.
So this is 105.
What you have here.
That questions are statements. And,
they are statements, yes. That's a good point. So what I did is I redid the survey, and I took out all of the questions that would go into a later survey. It's down to 105 questions. Now, the other question which you brought up is, it's great, you can't have too much information.
Right, precisely.
But what are you going to do with it?
Right.
I mean, okay, you're going to get these results, what do you do? So I went through this questionnaire under each of the elements, and I have them grouped under elements, okay? For example, energy element, there's 5 items, okay? And I labeled each of the statements in the survey based on how it would be incorporated into the comprehensive plan. I labeled it either goals, policies, or action items, okay? Those are the 3, that brings up another issue, and that is Craig Swanson sent to the staff here, I think Kazi probably got it, an email saying, how do we structure these goals that we set up and the policies and the action items are probably the most important part of the comprehensive plan. They are part of the plan. They say, here's what we're going to do. The material that precedes them is background information, not necessarily a plan. So anyway, Craig went through all of the comprehensive plans for every county in Arizona and looked to see how they're structured. And every one of them, except for Yavapai County, has goals and policies. Okay, we have goals and objectives. I don't know the difference between them. And quite frankly, I think goals are where we want to go. Policies are, this is going to be in effect going forward. It's not a goal. We're not going to achieve it. We're going to put this, these are what we're going to say to people. Here's how we're going to make our decisions. And then he added, Craig added an item called action items, which would fit into Kazi's proposal for a implementation section, okay? So I have taken every one of the statements in this questionnaire and I have labeled it. Would this go into the goals? Would this go into the policies, or would it go into the action items? And that was to address your concern about what are we going to do with this. Okay. So I hope that'll be clear.
That's part of my concern about what we're going to do with this.
Okay, so I sent this out for everybody to look at. I don't know if you had time to go through them all, and I'm looking for everybody's input on
Well, my first
Where we go
question
from
is administering this instrument.
Okay,
How are we going to approach the?
that is one of the things I addressed in here that was raised last time. Basically, I said, I'm willing to put it up. I'm willing to put the data, collect the data, and put it in whatever form county staff wants to have it. I don't know whether IT staff, Jeremy was going to go and talk to them and see, do they have the resources to put this up themselves? So that's where we sit on that issue.
I think we have the bandwidth, but as far as human resources to actually.
So, and, yeah, Mr. Chairman, so that's the concern that remains with me at this point is our staff is at capacity and our ITS and our GIS staff are at capacity as well. To put each of these surveys online takes about 40 man-hours to do that. And so that is in addition to whatever their other daily duties are and their workload. So in talking to the GIS folks and the ITS folks, there's a lot of concern about that, putting that up there and administering that. That being the case, if we were going to do something like that, that'd be something I would still need some approval on from their directors.
One comment on the GIS issue. There were several feedback comments in the original survey saying, you're trying to figure out my address using some GIS information. Like computers quite often will have some GPS data about their location and stuff. But one person said, I'm filling this out, I'm in, Oregon, and you're using that as my location. So they were saying, just put a line in there so I can enter my address. And then I won't have these glitches. Some of them, their computer didn't have that information and it was not able to determine where they were from. So it's much more straightforward to just say, put your address in there. I would recommend that. And that eliminates the whole complication of GIS.
I think the original survey had something like that too, or one of our surveys as well. Again, I'm not speaking for GIS. That's just the concern that they voiced to me and the workload hours that they provided to me as well. And
I guess what I'm saying is I think the workload that is imposed from that requirement is probably not necessary.
That, again, I'm just talking about staffing time right now. That's primarily the concern that I've got. And if the surveys, and there's no question that the survey questions are appropriate and valid, if that's something that the committee determines that is necessary or appropriate at this point, my recommendation from the staff level would be let's take those questions that are appropriate to the remaining elements that we've got. Let's incorporate those into the remaining required surveys that we've got, and then we can look at these other survey questions at a later time.
Mary, you have a comment?
I do. I'd like to offer sort of maybe a counter suggestion, because I think this is amazing work and I think we should do it. I was one of those that said, I'm not sure we need another survey. We've already done the vision surveys and things like that. So I'm wondering if we couldn't turn this into a resource document. Obviously take and pull all of those comments. I mean, these are comments that our county thinks are really important issues related to the comprehensive plan. So why can't, first of all, we send it to the unincorporated areas who are doing their own visioning and saying, for your reference, you might want to know that these are some issues that have been identified across the county. We could also put it out as a resource document in September or whatever when we're doing the final review and say, we want to provide this resource document and say, when you're looking at the plan and reviewing it, we want your comments, and we'd like to give you this resource document that shows some real issues that have been identified as if we've been doing our visioning and things like that. So it becomes something that helps inform and can be used as a guide when people are evaluating it instead of doing another survey. I think another survey is confusing. This to me gets to the visioning survey, which we already asked before. But it allows us to use this, and I think in a different way of when we present it as a separate document, but in, at the same time that we do the review of the plan and say, we just want to share this with you. We did the visioning, and these are the issues that came up. And so as you're reviewing it, take a look at what the county has said is really important. Have we addressed those issues? Are there comments that you'd like to change? And so we're putting it back in the hands of the citizens, but we're providing this as a resource for doing that. I mean, and to me, for example, Beaver Creek is just now starting to do its, visioning, we're a little behind. But to provide this to the committee that's really doing the work and saying, you might want to be informed in the visioning that work that you're doing, that these are priorities that, members of the county have identified. That would be my suggestion instead of going to another survey.
Any other comments? John?
Basically, one of the suggestions you made was that we take anything that is really kind of a local issue that would be of concern to a particular community, but may not have a wider concern. Those should not be part of this survey, because this is a county level survey.
Right.
So all of those questions have been moved
Right.
into that later survey. I kept the questions that I felt had countywide, relevance.
Right.
And my concern about not doing a survey and just giving it to them later for maybe discussion in their community plans or something, if they come back and say, yes, this list of things needs to go in the comprehensive plan, we've now delayed it, to the point of where there's just no more time to incorporate anything like that.
Well, but we're sending it out starting in September for a 60-day review. I mean, we're going to have to evaluate,
But who's going to, okay, you get your feedback in 60 days, you've already reached the deadline now. There's no time to incorporate that input. If it's just a few lines of, comments or something, that's fine. But this is a substantial survey. It's going to provide a lot of input.
Well, and I think that's our job. Our job is to create a plan that represents the county, all right, and the people who live in this county. If we get a lot of comments back, yay, because it means a whole lot of people have looked at what we've done and have recommendations about it. And then it's our job as the committee to review those. Now, we may not necessarily agree or say that it's already incorporated, but isn't that the point of the process?
I'm comfortable with that if we agree that we will go to the Board of Supervisors and ask for an extension, because I don't think there will be enough time to incorporate.
I don't think there'll be any
It's in
extension,
the
frankly.
timeline.
So,
Yeah.
This isn't a 2023 to 2030.
okay, I understand that, and I'm saying that's why I'm uncomfortable. I think
The
basically,
response to comments is in the timeline. Responding to county comments, the point of the 60 days to get, it's alive, we revise it as they come in. We have, I believe it's usually a spreadsheet with all the comments and then how we respond, if there's a change made, not a change made, all that kind of stuff. Like that, we do have to change, if there's comments, we are gonna amend those elements and draft.
I just
prior
don't.
to going to the commission and supervisor.
I understand what you're saying. I don't understand the reason, other than the staff shortage, of not starting that process so that we have access to that before that.
Well, you say other than, I think that's.
Well, I've already volunteered to do it, and I don't think I've gotten an
I'm
answer.
a
to that
recovering
question.
HR director, so I'll tell you
Yeah.
it's more than other than. Yes, Connie.
Just a question for clarity. So John, correct me, are you proposing that we do away with the existing vision statements and introduce yours in lieu of?
No,
Okay,
no, this would be supplementary.
so you're adding it to the questions that we've already had?
These are questions that have not been included in any of our previous surveys.
See,
Yeah.
here's my problem with that, John. Just pull some numbers here right off of the growth areas element. Reporting population of Yavapai County is 236,209. We've gotten 1,000 people to respond back, which is poor. That's 0.004%. If we had even 1% of the population, it would be 2,360. If we complicate this thing and make it worse, we're going to get even fewer people. It's too much. As I said, if you study marketing at all, you've got a 3-second soundbite. That's all people are going to stop to listen. If we muddy the waters now and come back with this, again, I think everything you have is great, and I think every single person that's in a position in the county should have the answers to all those questions. But for this committee right now, at this point and stage of the game, I just think it's a little too complicated. They're valid. Again, they're valid. We've got a bigger problem. We've got hardly any respondents. So basically what we're doing, we're gathering from the 900, 1,000 people that we do have, we're gathering that information, putting it in a pocket with our own known information because we live in these communities, and we're going to come up with a comprehensive plan based on the facts that we already know. Again, I think that's all great information, great questions, just not sure it's for this venue at this late date. It's too complicated for what I think we have. I mean, that's just my point. I do a lot of this kind of stuff, and nobody has time, as I said before, to go through, 5 pages of, they're just not going to do it, as evidenced by the numbers. I mean, 0.004% have responded.
Right. There are people in this county who would be willing, and you said yourself, you personally would be willing to sit down and go through the survey.
And I did, I'm part of 1,000.
And I think there are other people in this county, quite a
Yeah.
few probably, that
Yeah.
would be willing to give us their input.
So
I
what's the
think,
answer to that? I mean, how do we get,
I think by putting the survey online and giving them an opportunity. Now, we also talked about a paper survey. And I did mention in here that I'm putting together a paper survey. This is really for review. I don't have underneath every question, I don't say I agree, I left that out. But Supervisor Oberg said he'd like to be able to take this out to his town hall meetings
and
and
that's
say.
great for that.
And, okay,
That is great for that.
but I did not want to do that now because you haven't had a chance to review this current survey and say, this statement need to go, or I'd like to add this. So I decided to wait as far as this meeting went and see what the feedback was here, and then I could provide Supervisor Oberg with a paper survey that he could use.
I wish I could find my notes, but
Sandra, you have-
I agree with your comments about the sample. I mean, any statistician will tell you 900 people out of this county is not a significant sample. However, simply saying because of that, we're not going to ask for the input, I think there are people who would give us useful
No, the
input.
subject of the input that you're asking, you have there is absolutely 100% valid. We need to know a lot of that stuff. But I think if we really try to have the goal of inclusiveness, get these people involved in it, I don't think it's giving them more work. I think it's giving them less. I would be in favor, I think I could do this in 14 questions. If you want to do a paper survey, 14 questions. And I don't have my questions in front of me. I have them somewhere, but, do we need a better transportation? Yes or no? Yes. I mean, go right down the thing. Do we need to watch out for our water consumption? Yes. Do builders need to pay for infrastructure? Yes. I mean, make it simple.
The purpose of this survey is, for example, we had one suggestion that we simply drop any mention of water because we already know water is a problem. My response to that is, yes, we know water is a problem, but we don't know how people would like to see that addressed. And so this survey basically asks them for input as to how they would like to see us address these issues, not just what issues are important. I think we need that input, especially when you come to listing the policies that are in the comprehensive plan. What policies are you going to do? Are you just going to make them up, or are you going to ask the residents of the county, what do they think would be good policies?
But give the example of water. What are they going to do? The only thing that the person in this county can really do is self-conserve. We have to rely on the professionals to be able to tell us what we can, the lawyers and the professionals to tell us what we can and cannot do. I just think it's kind of getting in the weeds. I mean, again, they're great questions. I'm just not in favor of doing anything in this committee at this point with it. It's a lot.
Sandra has a comment.
Okay.
These are excellent, but after being a community activist for almost 50 years, I'm here to tell you the public is not going to get online and answer all these questions. They're just not going to do it. They care, but they don't care enough to do something about it. And we can keep force-feeding things to them, but they're not going to eat. We need to, I think, like Connie said, whittle it down to a few questions in each category, and then deal with it at the public meetings. We just finished the final draft, well, not the final, but
A draft.
the latest draft for the update of the comprehensive plan and PV. And we put all of these surveys online, and people just don't do it. And a lot of people are not even included because they don't have computers and they don't want to have a computer. So how do you get feedback from those people? And they're just as important as everybody who has a computer.
What I said and what we agreed to was that we should have 2 surveys. Oh, I shouldn't say we agreed to, we talked about it. Having an online survey and also having a paper survey.
I remember
so that Supervisor Oberg and others who go into these town hall meetings can open the meeting by saying, okay, let's just pass this out, and we'd like to have you fill this out. And his argument was, the input you get is maybe a statement, a phrase, one sentence, I'm concerned about water. A survey like this would bring to mind a lot of issues, and they would get more useful feedback in the town hall meeting if people had gone through something like this ahead of time. I'm not looking at doing an online survey instead of a paper survey or a town hall survey. I'm looking at doing both. I think you're going to get useful info. I personally, and I know, I'm just one person, but it's a whole lot more convenient for me to sit down and do a survey online than it is to go to a town hall meeting. And I will have a much better opportunity to give you my input than I would if I'm sitting in a crowd of 15 people and, we go around for an hour and a half, something.
Well, and I deal with the public and the community, and I'm here to tell you, there's a huge majority of people out there who do not have computers, don't want a computer, will not fill out a form, and a lot of them, because of their age, cannot go to a public meeting. So how do you reach those people?
That's a good question. I think you can argue a lot of people won't take the survey, and you're right. You can also argue that a lot of people won't go to a town hall meeting. Okay, so I'm looking for whatever ways we can to get input. There are some people that maybe we won't be able to get input from.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please. Yes, Vincent.
So, looking at the work that I've been doing the last 10 years in transportation, I would agree with several comments made. Number one, we always want more information, by all means, so don't disagree with that. But I think some things that Connie said really resonate with the work that I've seen over the years is it just takes everything we have, and over the last 10 years, trust me, SIMPO has invested in the best consultants that we could find, the best experts we can find to gather information. And I think most of us would agree that transportation infrastructure, if you're going to get a buzz, can generate a buzz. Do people want more highways? Do they want more roads? Do they want transit? Do they want these things? And we still look at numbers like what Connie referred to. And this is after we're saying, yes, we would love 200 questions, but what is the attention span of our audience? And we've looked at all forms of social media, of paper surveys, of online, of town hall meetings. And SIMPO has, I would like to say, tried it all. I don't know if we have. We've gone to different venues, different places, public events. And it is a tough business. It is just absolutely tough. So, if there's other ideas out there, we would encourage them ourselves and welcome them. I really do remain challenged that, a survey of this size would really get that engagement. Not that we don't want the information, not that we don't need it, but, I think, Connie, you referenced, seconds of having an attention to somebody. So I would be shocked, what is the largest survey that someone's done in this room? And there may be one or two of you, but, to get my attention, and I try and have some great sympathy for those that are putting it out there, empathy, I guess. But you got me for a few minutes at best on the hottest of topics. Yeah. So, and I just offer that with, again, my expertise from transportation. One of the studies that SIMPO does looks at our region for the next 25 years, and we want the public input. We want them to help shape what is that central Yavapai region going to look like for the next 25 years? What are the safety issues? What is the infrastructure? What's the multimodal part of it? So we really do work hard. With that said, our longest survey is probably no more than 10 questions at times. And again, I'm not opposed to it. Please, if there's other ideas, share with me. But in the last 10 years, we really haven't seen it. So that's my
Jeremy has a comment, but I'd like to slide something in real quick before.
Go ahead, sir.
And that is, well, as a recovering elected official, I can tell you that to me, the most important, the most valuable information you receive, frankly, is not the information you get from people who can sit in front of a computer. The people who come to the meetings, the people who take the time out to actually come to the meeting, whether they attend by WebEx or in live, in person or whatever. That's the information I really want to garner the most, once again, from that point of view. I think the work you've done is beautiful. I mean, those are really good, they're not questions, they're statements, and they're agree, disagree, somewhere in between. And they really will refine the knowledge that we already have. I can see that. Just, once again, I was the one who made the statement that there's no such thing as too much information, it's just what you do with it. And how you compile it, and how you review it, analyze it, et cetera, and then use it. And I think that from that point of view, from my selfish point of view, I suppose, something that the supervisors can take to a meeting, or the staff can take to a public venue and ask people to review and comment on is probably way more valuable. Would be way more valuable to me anyways, once again, from my point of view. Jeremy, you had something that you wanted to add?
Actually, yeah, Mr. Chairman, I was just kind of listening to the comments from the committee members, and I would kind of offer this as just some reflective listening. From what I'm hearing is, it sounds like these questions would be appropriate in a form, on a paper form, and I would offer up that as we schedule these outreach meetings for the spring and the summer here, I think these would be perfect to take out to those communities and to have people fill those out in paper and just gather their comments that way. And just as a paper survey document, to Mary's point too, as a reference document, we could put that up on our webpage today and use that and let the communities review that, research that as they're putting together those their own community plans at this point. So I think I think if we did something like that as kind of a hybrid approach of just using those as a paper document that we take out to our libraries, to our town hall meetings and things like that, and I can put those in every single library for now until the end of the year. I think that, to me, that sounds like as a staff, from the staff viewpoint, I think that would be an easy implementation right now.
Okay, and that sounds like it's something that's doable.
Very doable.
That sounds like something that won't be a great burden on human resources.
That would be very doable, and I think, and that would preserve my resources as well from my our department and the other departments.
I like the idea that given that you're doing it right away, that we can get started on it. I think that's great. I can also, well, it sounds to me like what we need is two documents. One that you'd use as a reference document that people could download. The other one would be a questionnaire that could be passed out in a meeting. So I could reformat this into those two documents and deliver those to you.
I think that's perfect. And as soon as I get those, I'll get those up on the webpage that day.
Okay.
How does everybody else feel about it? I see Mary nodding her head. That's always a good sign. Connie, good sign. Okay. That's it.
I know.
Yes, Cos.
Yeah, I also think the study or the work that Mr. Black has done is immense, I mean, it really reflects, but he's given us also a lot of good questions and answers. For example, when we are working on, when you read this water element document, and you have 65 people concerned about too much water, groundwater, well, all those things have been answered there. So from a policy standpoint, the thing Mr. Black already pointed out from our existing survey, the idea is to carry on with the policy in the document. And that's been done, so that's a big plus. So what he's pointing out is giving us answers already, that what does people want. We just need to kind of look at that and go through those things and revise our text to reflect those surveys.
Mary.
And I was going to say too, and maybe we just leave your statements in, John, but I mean, I'm thinking of one I read, was skimming them all, but it keeps coming back to me, dark skies. I mean, but there are others in here, we already have them in the elements, right? So the priorities that came out of the county, many of these are already addressed in the elements. Are we just going to ask them again and get more information? But I mean, I know we've addressed, native plants, right? What are, less water intensive, dark skies. There are issues that are identified here that we have already incorporated into the elements.
I think dark skies is a good example. Joseph mentioned that in our last meeting. Okay, we have a dark skies policy, but what do I have to do to comply with it? So one of the statements we had is needed to spell out in the zoning
what it means.
What do you need to do to comply? Okay, that's something that, it was a statement on the survey, but you could just take it and say, okay, let's write up policy. You don't need to go out to the public and, determine whether that's a hot button with them.
But some of those are building codes already, and the
Yeah.
builders know, they understand the different fixtures to comply. They're dark sky compliant. So some of that's redundant, it's already there.
Yeah.
Again, that's the stuff that we get off into the weeds, it's almost too much detail.
Well, as a builder, I'd want to know exactly what do I need to do. Give it to me in one place so I know I've complied with all of that. So I think some clarification there.
Services, and they tell you.
Pardon?
You go to development services, they tell you.
You didn't
No
comply.
questions.
But that
Anyway.
stays in your zoning ordinance or your other building
Yes.
code regulation.
Right,
You
right.
don't go deep into that. In comprehensive plan, you just have a
Exactly.
very overall, implement dark sky ordinance. You don't say anything.
That
more.
question, or that statement about, need to clarify exactly, that was put into the future survey because we said everything that has to do with any P and Z change or anything that has to do with a local concern, let's take it out of this survey. So that's no longer in the survey. That would be,
Sounds to me like we have a consensus as far as what we want to do with the material we have. We have staff support on it.
okay.
And is there any further comments on that as far as
Chair,
moving forward?
I
Yes.
just, when you revise those two things, I think with stats, we just need to go through those questions or statements, just because there are some things I've caught in here that mention about, one of them was like, create local community parks that can be maintained by county parks, and then there's no parks department, so just afterwards, we'll go through and make
Small
sure
bit.
that.
What I'll do is I'll deliver a Word document to Jeremy so that you can edit
So they
it
can revise
however
it.
you want to do it. Make that easy.
Wonderful. Good.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Moving right along. Actually, as far as moving right along goes, we're on to other business. Upcoming items of interest for the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee. Is that you, Kaz?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to point out and ask your direction. In our schedule, if you notice, we had put a couple of meetings for a joint meeting with the CPAC and Planning and Zoning Commission. So how do you feel about that? We haven't had any, we were supposed to schedule one in May, but time just got caught up and we didn't do anything. But is there any appetite for something like that in the future, like maybe June, July? I have also a couple of them scheduled for next couple of months. I want to see how you all feel.
Okay.
Either having it in your CPAC meeting, inviting them here, or having a P&Z meeting, you coming over there. And if all of you cannot make it there, maybe a couple of you can attend that, and that'd be a representation of CPAC. I don't know how you feel, you just tell
Okay.
me.
I'll tell you, first of all, from a practical standpoint, we need to go to them.
Okay.
We can't expect them to come to us, the different entities. I think that it's a great idea, though. I think it's a very important idea that we collaborate like that. So that's my personal opinion, and that's coming from the position of being a planning commissioner.
One question. Presumably, you want to get the conversation started. Let's say we go and meet with them. Are we asking them for specific feedback on certain topics or whatever? And will they be given something ahead of time to say, here's what we're
We'll need to
concerned about?
format it in advance, obviously.
Okay, so you'll be preparing something?
Yeah,
for that.
work with the chairman and format some of the heavy lifting stuff that you both share the same vision.
Understood.
So there's no, because what happens is that at the end of the day, what the committee, final document, it goes to P&Z. P&Z make recommendation to the board, right? So I want to make sure all the transition is very smooth, and then the P&Z doesn't, at the last minute change anything that you have already worked.
Well,
with.
be nice for us to get feedback and incorporate that instead of them going to the board of supervisors and saying these changes should be made.
Right, that's why I think we can avoid that by having these meetings, and you guys can be, they already started looking into a couple of these elements, and we have a way for, Mr. Chairman, one of our commissioner is here, Linda Buchanan, I want to kind of recognize her for her time. So this is like, just to help them out, and so we are all in the same page. So we'll schedule something, and if you are okay.
Yeah, I am. I'm good. I'm perfectly okay with that. I think it's a good idea, not only with planning and zoning, but with all the other entities that are involved in this that we need to collaborate with. So but I think it's our responsibility to bring it to them as opposed to forcing them to come to us.
Okay,
I
so,
think it'd be much more efficient and effective in that way.
so should we do it in July, the first one?
I think July would be good.
Okay. And I also, the second item I had under this other business is the public outreach. So Jessica, she's got other work going on, and John over here. So while they're still here, I'd like to go out and do a very aggressive outreach, both side of the mountain, do some over here, places like Beaver Creek and Cornville, and then go to Yarnall, Congress. But it's so spread out. We may have to knock out 2 meetings in a day or something like that to cover, to make progress. So if that's okay, we're gonna start initiating
It's
that.
okay with me, it's a lot of work on your part.
Of course, are we gonna be publishing a schedule of when and where those meetings are and so?
Yeah, we'll update that and we'll send you a new schedule.
So that if we want to attend a
Schedule.
particular one, we
Yeah.
know when to come, okay.
Yes.
And the more participation, the better. Sandra, please.
I'd like to make a recommendation that they not all be evening meetings.
No,
Oh, yeah,
daytime.
absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, daytime meeting, yeah, but that works better for us,
Yeah.
because evening meetings can get, after putting in 8-10 hours, night meeting,
And
Turning into a
need to be
15
we lose all the
day.
steam.
Day meetings, yes.
That's a good idea, all by itself.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we also like to catch some of the business owners, and they work all day long, and evening, it's become a little tiresome for a lot of them. So we just go, I would rather be like, reaching out to them where they are, rather than them coming to us.
Yeah, so I'm gonna say, if we're gonna do that, and I think it's wonderful, let's get the calendar put in place of all of them. So that, business owners, particularly we have a lot of small businesses, they may be the only person, so finding someone else, we wanna make sure that they have the ability to come and can get it on their
Give
calendars.
notice well in advance.
Yeah, because the people you want are the people who are working, which I think is fabulous. But we need to make sure that it's on schedules way ahead of time.
Sounds good. I agree. Everybody else? Anyone? Any other comments, feedback, guidance? Looks like everybody's satisfied with that plan, so good. So moving on, I think a really important element of these meetings is a roundtable for committee members to bring up any other topics that weren't included in the agenda today. John, you're first. Go ahead.
Okay, this is just a follow-up on the survey. I'd like to request that, Kazi, that you look through the survey as it is. I've marked them as, these could be goals, these could be policies, these could be action items, and look at some of those. Even though we may not have survey results, it may be that you say, yeah, that's a good one to set for a policy or something. So I think it could be a resource document for you.
Excellent document, yes, I think that because you already done the hard work. You already figured out of that 1,100 survey results we got, you gave us what people are wanting.
Okay.
So we can start there. And then whatever other survey instrument you are working on, we can take it out to the, in-person outreach.
Sure.
And we'll get feedback from them, and then what Jeremy does online. So those are all cumulatively help us.
Wonderful. So going to the end of the table, Vincent, do you have any comments anything else you'd like to
I
add?
don't, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Sandra, anything?
No, I have nothing.
Nada? John, anything else? Going once, yes, Patty.
Is it possible to incentivize people in the county to participate in this? Like, give them 10% off their Yavapai County tax bill? If they fill out the survey.
Boy, that would get you now, wouldn't it?
10% off, I'd do
A
that.
lot of comments that you don't want, but, how do you feel about incentivizing people?
I don't think I can get through that through the board.
He's already spoken on that issue.
Yeah, that's right, as I recall,
No,
yeah.
we can talk about.
Okay, yeah, good, well, other than incentivizing people, do you have anything else? Okay. That was good, I like that.
That's been taken out of the CPAC dictionary.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Take that off the record.
Anybody else, anything else? Yes,
I just have one final comment. I would like to thank everybody on the committee here and all of you for the feedback that you've given me in this. I think the result is greatly improved, and it's been great working with all of you.
Thank you for your work.
Thank you, John, for all the work you've done, and I think that you definitely earned your paycheck this week for being the vice chairman.
Yeah, those rewards in heaven are just killers.
Oh, yeah. Literally. Okay, so anything else? Going once, going twice? Call to the public. Do we have any public? Call it. Yes, please, yes, you.
And I'm Linda Buchanan. I'm Planning and Zoning Commissioner from District 2, and I live in Camp Verde. I've lived there about 40 plus years. I'm one of those members of the public that hasn't submitted a survey response, but I think that many of us are so grateful for the work that you're doing and your efforts and attempts to address this critical 10-year planning window. I arrived for this meeting a little bit early, and as I came in, I heard almost everyone comment on traffic. How was the traffic? Where were you coming from? And how was the traffic? But when I look at the transportation element in the survey, and I see that something like 54 people responded on transportation, and 48% of them were retired, and another 26% report working remotely from home. They didn't necessarily say retired, they said not working. I think that's somewhat indicative of what these survey results are. You know, a lot of the people that are working or going to school or really out here using the highways, getting from one place to another, aren't responding through these surveys. So I appreciate that they're taking a very broad effort to be as inclusive as possible. When I look around this room or any planning body, I often notice how many of us have gray or graying hair, and it speaks to our ability to be present in the planning process. Younger people often are not doing that. So we have started on the East Valley or East County side an attempt to involve some of our future leaders through the Arizona Town Hall process with input using the comprehensive plan as our intended topic in September. So really appreciate the work you're doing. I would also encourage you, especially in the growth management or the growth areas, to consider the other elements. I heard you talk about BLM and state trust. In East Yavapai, we have national monuments. We have 6 Native American communities that are under sovereign status. And we have hundreds, approaching 1,000 acres recently that have gone into agricultural conservation easements in perpetuity. Those things change the impact. And so particularly in Camp Verde, you see the Camp Verde zip code, but there's parts of Camp Verde that are under county jurisdiction, and they are heavily impacted by those conservation easements and the way, for instance, that our Prescott National Forest connects to our Coconino National Forest when it crosses the Verde River, and that those are wildlife byways. And so I don't want you to think that the public is lashing out after the fact, after you've done all this work. What we can see on the website with access to your packets or not seeing your minutes until maybe 60 days because they're not available to the public until, of course, after they're approved. And then once the packet information, it seems to disappear, and instead we have the results of video of the meeting. But how many people are going to sit and watch an entire 2 or 3 hour meeting, even if they're really interested? So if you look at some of those elements, the availability of the packets and the information, and also encourage those of us that are in community education and community outreach to engage our affinity groups. For instance, I was at the Verde Natural Resource Conservation meeting a couple weeks ago, and there were dozens of people there involved in all sorts of these very elements that you're addressing. And when I spoke to the fact that not one person out of that group had advocated for their interest in agriculture or the rural nature, and they just claimed they hadn't seen it. So if we get that link out in many different ways, your Kiwanis, your Rotaries, your all sorts of affinity groups, and encourage the participation. Maybe not through the survey if you've got as many results as you want, but people really truly do care, and we're listening, and we appreciate this work.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you very much. Any other members of the public who would like to speak?
Yeah, I think I'll comment. My name is Harvey Grady, and I'm here as chair of the Verde Valley Food Policy Council. We're dealing with an action plan to improve our whole food system. And we participated in submitting a community vision statement a little over a year ago. And one of my concerns has been, due to the low response rate from the survey, we need to get more community input. And I really appreciate your concept of reaching out with the town halls or the community meetings, because I know a number of organizations that have felt left out, and so it would be helpful to have a way for them to participate again. So I'm glad we're moving in that direction.
Well, thank you very much for your comments. And once again, your organization is the Verde Valley?
Verde Valley Food Policy Council.
Policy.
Yeah.
They have a
One of the
community vision
things-
statement on the website.
Yeah, one of the things we've discovered, across the nation, there are now roughly 300 food policy councils because of problems in our entire food system. And with the plan at this point, we can only fit in perhaps in one or two elements in terms of preserving farmland. Nationally, we're losing 3 acres of farmland every minute. So there's a huge pressure upon food production, and many problems are arising, including the supply chain problems of delivering food. We may be facing a potential period of food shortage that's coming up. So there are those kinds of concerns, and one of the questions, is this planning process able to recognize some of these problems and be able to focus policy or action steps in that direction? So I appreciate the work you're doing. It's grinding, but it is hopefully rewarding.
Well, thank you, and hopefully you'll remain engaged as well in your organization.
I shall.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Anyone else?
Can I, Mr. Grady, is your organization a LLC or a 501?
501.
You know, that might be just a suggestion to the county. I know you guys have your hands full, but we could get a comprehensive list of how many 501s are in the Yavapai County area, because they are an interested group combined of people that have specific interests, as he does, in agriculture and water. Could we, I mean, is that possible to
Yeah, they're
send
about
out a
700.
survey?
They're about
I see
700.
Jeremy taking notes right now.
Because that would be
There's a
a
list.
large group of interested parties. I think I read a few years ago that Yavapai County has over 1,700 501s. In the
700.
area.
We have 700.
You have 7 in your area?
No, in Yavapai County, there are about 700.
Okay.
The 1,700 came out, and it was all those that had applied and that the IRS was axing a number of years
Oh,
ago.
okay.
So the real number, I think, is closer to 700.
That's still a good number.
Yeah.
But that's
Yeah.
a large
Yes,
group
yes.
in one area.
It's a better
of
number than
people.
1,700. but
Yeah.
Yes.
Just one quick housekeeping, and do I have your permission to upload the transportation, the water element, and the growth and open space in our website?
You have
So
my
people
permission.
get-
What say everybody
I
else?
would say that I'm for that, but put version 1 on it.
Okay, yeah. All those will be,
Okay.
we'll put it
Version whatever.
respectively, version 1, version 2, or version 3.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, but we'll go ahead and put it on tonight.
Yeah, we won't use final draft anymore.
Read final,
Yay.
final, non-final.
Yeah, we'll skip all that final. I feel properly chastised, thank
So
you.
we'll reformat it and put it out.
Yeah, very good, yeah, I'd like that very much. Anything else before we call adjournment? Going once, going twice. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm heading back over. Wait to go home. So much cleaned up in the snow.
Yeah.
Everything's, unwinterized.